also, if there are no objections, that the superintendent can move forward. Okay? All right? Good. Okay.
Thank you for your support.
The next item is item 8, which is personal and labor relations. Mrs. Deepan?
Sure. Be it resolved that the following motions identified as items A through E be approved as presented.
Second.
Thank you.
Is there any discussion? None.
No, there isn't.
Okay. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Absolutely. Mr. Fields?
Yes.
Mrs. Hobson?
Yes.
Mr. Irwin?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Patel?
Yes.
Ms. Rashid?
Yes.
Mrs. Deepan?
Yes.
Dr. Connors?
Yes.
Motion's carry.
Next item is item 9, approval of minutes. Mr. Irwin?
Be it resolved that the following minutes be approved as submitted. A special meeting of October 8th, 2019.
Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
All support.
All in favor?
Aye.
I guess it's been a long night for everybody, including the president. All I was thinking about was sports PowerPoints when whoever came up with the formula for that in the schedule. That's all I could think of. Anyway, so all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay.
Be it resolved that the following minutes be approved as submitted. The business meeting of October 10th, 2019. The executive session of October 10th, 2019.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? So it carries. Next item is item 10, public comments from the floor. The Board of Education recognizes the value of public comment on educational issues and school matters of community interest. In support of this position, the law establishes a period of public comment at every board meeting. Individuals wishing to speak must state their name and address. Comments are limited to 3 minutes duration, but an individual may speak a second time after all others who wish to speak on the topic have been heard. The board may require the individuals register to speak prior to the beginning of the meeting. Participants may submit written material in support of their position. All statements and/or questions shall be directed to the presiding officer, and no participant may address or question board members individually. All speakers are requested to express themselves in a civil manner with due respect for the dignity and privacy rights of others whose legal rights may be affected. Please note, while it is not the board's intention to stifle comment on matters of legitimate concern to the school community, the public should be aware that if their statements violate the rights of others under the law governing defamation of information of invasion of privacy, they may face personal liability to the injured party. If speakers are uncertain of the legal ramifications of their comments, the board urges them to seek guidance beforehand from their own legal advisor. Does anyone wish to address the board? Do I have a motion to close?
So moved.
All's in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Pass. Next item is item 11, fiscal plannings and operations. Mr. Patel.
Be it resolved that the following motions identified as items A through N be approved as presented.
Second.
Is there any discussion? If not, Mr. Board Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Fields?
Yes.
Mrs. Hobson?
Yes.
Mr. Irwin?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Patel?
Yes.
Ms. Rashid?
Yes.
Mrs. Deepan?
Yes.
Dr. Connors?
Yes.
Motion's carry.
Item 12, policy. Mr. Irwin.
Be it resolved that the following motion, identified as item A, be approved as presented.
Second.
Discussion. I just want to make a comment that this particular effort has been going on for a couple of years within our policy and legislative committee. And I want to personally thank Mr. Irwin, and also thank someone who's not here, Mr. Ira Stern, for taking this on, and our administrative representative, our board attorney, Dave Rubin. This was a massive undertaking. Our policies, when you go online, are PDFs and on the current website. They were not searchable, and so we took this effort on to make sure that they were put in such a format that now, when they will be put on our website, you can search for items and find, this is there are there's a bunch of series of policies, but now they'll be easier to search, easier to find, and we had to reconcile them with the policies we already had in things, so it was a massive undertaking. Thank you, Mr. Irwin, as chairman, and thank you to those people.
And also, thanks to the whole policy committee, really. It was both the board members, past and present, and the members of the public who had quite a bit of good input when we were discussing the policies. The reason it was such a long undertaking was that all of the policies and all of the regulations in the new manual were read word for word, vetted by the committee, checked to ensure that they're in conformity with current practice in our district and also our current way of doing things, because our policy manual has some differences from Strauss-Esme in terms of how we did things. So where appropriate, we made edits and suggestions, and Mr. Rubin has told me that sometimes a lot of boards just take this manual and say, okay, and ship it along. That's not the way we do things here. There was quite a bit of due diligence on it. I mean, you're talking about a couple thousand pages worth of policy. So it was for that reason that we've spent quite a bit of time on it, that the committee was able, to forward with confidence to the board the manual as it is currently constructed for the board's approval. Of course, this is just first reading, so formal adoption of it won't be until second reading at our business meeting, which gives, a month between now and then. If any members, you've been provided with the manuals and the materials and, some of the edits. So should any questions arise between now and then, please feel free to reach out to myself or Mr. Rubin or Superintendent Rinaldi.
And indulge me for one personal comment, is having served now about a decade, I can still recall going to my first training for the New Jersey school boards, and I had a question about the school board and if issues were to come to our district, and the answer that was given by the New Jersey school boards at the time was, is it in your policy? And that is the backbone of boards of education, are their policy and guidelines. And so, thank you for such a thorough review.
Mr. President, can I also just
Yes.
comment on Mr. Irwin and Mr. Rubin? Again, thank you. As a member who sat on the board along with Ms. Hobson as well, this is a tremendously tedious function. I mean, there's thousands of pages of policy, and then seeing if it's compliance with the laws, and the laws have changed. And it wasn't simply just saying, it's just an edit and saying, put the there, and that is the addition. It was not that at all. And Bill, your tireless effort of putting additions and deletions, and for us even just to read it, it was like, wow, my God, this is the thing again? Again, I thank you for going through that with a fine tooth comb. Mr. Rubin, again, advising us and putting us in proper perspective. I don't know who else could have led this with such a great tenacity and effort. Again, thank you, commend you all, and the members of the public as well as Satellite.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. So, will you please call the roll, Mr. Richter?
Mrs. Hobson,
Yes.
Mr. Irwin,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Patel,
Yes.
Ms. Rashid,
Yes.
Mr. Fields.
Yes.
Mrs. Deepan,
Yes.
Dr. Connors.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Item 13 is curriculum. Ms. Rashid?
Be it resolved that the following motions identified as items A and B be approved as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Board Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Irwin,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Patel,
Yes.
Ms. Rashid,
Yes.
Mr. Fields.
Yes.
Mrs. Hobson,
Yes.
Mrs. Deepan,
Yes.
Dr. Connors?
Yes.
Motion's carried.
Item 14 is pupil services. Mr. Johnson?
Be it resolved that the following motions identified as items A through C be approved as presented.
Second?
Any discussion? Mr. Board Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Patel?
Yes,
Ms. Rashid?
Yes.
Mr. Fields?
Yes.
Mrs. Hobson?
Yes.
Mr. Irwin?
Yes.
Mrs. Deepan?
Yes.
Dr. Connors?
Yes.
Motion's carried.
Item 15, administrative and auxiliary. Mrs. Hobson?
Be it resolved that the following motions identified as items A through D be approved as presented.
Second.
Any discussion?
a question for the calendars. If it requires a change, can it be possible after this one?
Yes, it can be possible. Yeah, adjustment and approval from you all as well.
And when is that, when the last, we can make changes?
We can make changes at any time. If we need to change this year's calendar now, we can change it. Yeah, so that's the rules. And do you have specific questions on what you think might change for discussion?
Yes, it's with the Diwali, we're thinking like, since, it's Diwali is not the one day, and I think this year Diwali is also, falling on Saturday, and our New Year falls on Monday. So, if that day off can be switched off to the New Year day for this session, that will be good for the community.
We can make that adjustment, bring it to the board, and then they can approve in the calendar.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
As long as it doesn't affect the number of days and the end date, which is the 17th of June in graduation.
Total school days.
All right. Any other discussion? So, Mr. Board Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Patel?
Yes,
Ms. Rashid?
Yes.
Mr. Fields?
Yes.
Mrs. Hobson?
Yes.
Mr. Irwin?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Deepan?
Yes.
Dr. Connors?
Yes.
Motion's carried.
We're on item 17, committee reports. If you haven't got one, there's a summary in the back of the 3 committees that have met since our last meeting. And who would like to go first?
Oh,
Okay, Mr. Irwin.
The Policy and Legislative Committee met on Wednesday, October 30th, 2019, to review and approve the updated Strauss Esme Policy and Regulations Manuals and to review recent legislative developments of interest to the district. As we already discussed at some length, we did review and approve the policy manual and forward it to the board with recommendation for adoption on first reading, subject to changes in bylaw 0134 and policies 1642, 8550, 7446, and 8561, as reflected in the meeting minutes. The legislative update, the New Jersey State Board of Education has voted to eliminate the 10th grade ELA and ELA math and English tests, and is currently working on the creation of a single 11th grade test for graduation. So everything that's old is new again in education. We'll be back to the HSPA in no time. Governor Murphy signed into law S3160, A4865, establishing the 4-year pilot program on later school start times for high school students. And the governor also signed into law S2861, S3081, A4592, and A4446, which are a series of bills requiring school districts to ensure that health education programs that recognize the multiple dimensions of mental health are in our schools. So the committee's next meeting will be Thursday, December 5th, where we'll be reviewing any final input or changes to the policy manual prior to recommending that the board adopt on second reading. And there's also a proposed and policy regulation on civility that has been forwarded to the committee by administration for review. So committee members will be receiving a copy of that if they have not already.
Any questions for the Policy Legislative Committee, Chair. Okay. Mrs. Thompson?
The Cultural Climate and Community Relations Committee met on October 15, 2019, to review steps towards goals for the coming year. Goal 1, continuing sharing positive messages in the schools. Kanakamak Middle School is utilizing the Breen Brown philosophy to introduce the positive messaging campaign. Donna White will meet with her staff over the next few months to frame next steps and put up positive messages. The committee discussed Black History Month and having schools choose positive messages that correlate to posts on our new electronic signs throughout the month of February. Second goal was to continue building our partnerships with colleges and universities, particularly Rutgers, and develop partnerships with our community and local businesses. Rutgers University Division of Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Engagement, DICE, provided the committee Scarlet and Black novel. The Office of Curriculum and Instruction is reviewing the novel for possible curriculum integration. Volunteer recruitment efforts were discussed and ideas were shared on how to yield more volunteers by describing the roles available to volunteers at different events. Rutgers students enrolled in the undergraduate and graduate programs may require volunteer hours for their programs. It was suggested that students volunteer for the Education Foundation events. Signia USA, a Piscataway hearing aid manufacturer, has offered to bring information about hearing protection to Piscataway students. And goal 3 was to develop and implement volunteer outreach for schools and district events and other needs. The chair requested that the administration present the volunteer graphic organization to the President's Council for their organization. So I just would like to say that this is an ongoing project, as you see, and with the assistance of Colleen and Judy and others, we have been able to accomplish some things, and we're hoping to get some input from the public and the community. So I'm glad to see so many people here tonight, and I just hope that they will come to some of our meetings. The next meeting is Monday at 6:30. And if you have some input or would like to be a part of it, please come out so that we can accomplish these 3 goals.
Ms. Stephen?
Question for you, Mrs. Thompson.
Yes.
On the point about asking the Rutgers students to, use their volunteer hours in the PM, is there a relationship with Rutgers, or is anyone in the community working on
Yes.
building that?
Yes, Colleen is, and she's
Okay.
doing a great job with building that relationship. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? The last committee report is fiscal plans and operations. I chair that committee. The committee met last night. Wrote up a report and distributed it today electronically. There are a few things going on. This particular juncture, when we're talking about the budget, we're talking about a 3-year window. You're always involved in a 2018-19 audit of what was going on. Then the current year that you're in, which is 19-20, and then planning for 2021. On the audit, they will be presenting their findings in our December meeting. It will be a little bit later than we normally do because the state is undergoing some GATSB, it's called the Governance Advisory School Board, where they're doing analysis of certain things that we need to include in the audit, so we're going to be a little bit later, but that will be presented in our December meeting. Capital projects, I am very, 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 very excited for next week. I'm really, really excited. The school district has been putting up electronic marquees, if you've been around town. And they're up for the elementary, intermediate, and for the middle school. But next week, the high school marquee is finally going up. And that's why you've seen a lot of construction in front of the tennis courts. We took down the trees, we put up new vegetation, and we're gonna be going from a whiteboard where the letters were put up one at a time to an electronic display that's bigger than the other ones, because it's our, it's our school, and we can put up displays, et cetera. So I'm really excited. That's happening next week.
I think you're excited.
Because I want to be there when they actually, like,
Long time, when they plug it in, as they plug it in.
because now when somebody's driving through, when someone out of town is driving through town, they're going to see this marquee, right? This is the high school. Okay, this is Piscataway. We're planning for next spring, Piscataway High School stadium upgrades. This has been a phased-in project. The first thing that happened a year or two ago was the new football field, the track. We are finally getting to phase 2 where the bleachers up there, and maybe there's people in this room that have been, they're not American Disability compliant. They've been there since the 60s. And so finally, we're getting to the point where we are going to be replacing those. It's going to have handicap ramps. There's going to be a press box, et cetera. It's going to be great for the band. It's going to be great for everybody that's going to be using the facility. There's also included with that, though, is a new plaza right outside of the 11-12 entrance to the Patton Building. We just finished all that paving, but now there seems to be some, where the sculpture is. It's actually an arrow, believe it or not, up there, and then a wheel and a little television set. That's been there for a long time. That whole area is going to be renovated and made a little bit more student-friendly. Kids now sit on those concrete benches out there, et cetera. So that's happening. Something that we're being very proactive on, in the next item, is cybersecurity. I mean, you hear about it all the time. How many of you got an email that you opened up and they said, I shouldn't open up that email? Well, we have now put in place for our school system, we've hired a company that we're working with where we're looking at those kinds of phishing emails, et cetera, so that we don't find ourselves in a compromised position with all of our electronic systems. Transportation, the business office opened preschool busing bids, that we received under Governor Murphy. He was a big proponent of preschools, and so Piscataway was one of the first to apply and get the preschool grant, and so now we are associating with that busing. There's always a process where you have to put out a bid, then award the bid, and that has happened, and our business administrator manages that, and was it on tonight's agenda?
Yes.
Is that we had picked Layla Transportation, who was the one that had come through. The last thing is also, if you're ever frustrated when you get to a copier in one of the schools and they just don't work, and you have to run down the hall, go to another place, we now have a new copier vendor. There's 61 copiers across our 10 schools. And so it's a 5-year contract, and the service is going to be much better. And so thank you, David, for that, for managing that. We awarded it to Atlantic. And that's it. Our next meeting is going to be Wednesday, December 4th.
Just one, I know that you're not kidding when you say you're excited
Yeah.
about the high school market. I think it was my second meeting on the board, maybe close to 6 years ago now. Tom came up to me and said, "Hey, when you're going through the audits, when you're going through the budget, make sure you pay attention to that spot where there's money set aside for a new high school marquee. We're supposed to get that marquee done. Don't let that fall through the cracks." And he's been pounding the table on it for 5 years now. So hat tip to perseverance and following through and getting it done. And I hope you are there when that sign gets installed. You certainly deserve to. And Judy, if she's still here, ask to get a picture.
Get a picture, he's plugging the light in.
Yeah. It's like Christmas lights.
No, yes, thank you for that comment. We'll move on to new business, item 17. There should 18, it should be 18. There's a missing, sir?
Just a quick suggestion, something for the board to think about for the upcoming year. I had mentioned this to Tom before. The committee reports on the agenda generally appear after the business agenda. I think the board should consider putting them before the business portion of the agenda, perhaps directly after the approval of the minutes, but prior to public comments, just because there's often a lot of detail in the committee reports that relates to things that the board is about to vote on, in the business portion of the meeting. So it gives both board members the opportunity to ask questions of committee chairs and committee members prior to voting on it in the business meeting, but also gives the public the time to hear some of, the due diligence and rationale that was done on all these items. So it's just an agenda item, order consideration. And a similar one is with the student presentations that are generally slated under the superintendent's report. We usually have those almost every meeting that school is in session. We don't have them over the summer. And we always ask the forbearance of the student representatives, so we can get the younger kids in here and get them out of here and get them home. So we could consider putting, just formalizing that and putting it right ahead of the student representatives report, when we have a presentation, because that's kind of what we're doing anyway. So just a couple ideas.
Well, thank you for those comments. Mr. Irwin, superintendent's taking notes. Mrs. Hobson?
Yeah, I just had, and probably this is directed to Dr. Ranelli, maybe. I was just wondering about cursive writing in the schools. And I'm really concerned, and I know there are some parents that's concerned about it. And I asked David Rubin about it. He indulged me and sent me the bill that was it never went anywhere from what David was saying to me, but I did read it. And I just wanted to know, what can we do, because there's so much concern about it, because if the kids don't learn how to write their names, how do they sign bills, and how do they sign?
So we're concerned about it as well, along with grammar and vocabulary.
Right.
And we're looking for ways to infuse that without taking away from the standards that we have to, to teach according to the state, which they've sort of eliminated those types of things, especially cursive writing. My two teenage girls can't read cursive writing. They can sign their name because that's what they were taught, but they can't read an entire page of cursive writing. So we are in discussion, Dr. Baskerville and myself, with curriculum to sort of infuse more than just the name.
Right.
But I'll be honest with you, it's going to be tough with the standards that are put down, and the infusion of all of this. It's almost a lost art now.
Yeah.
That kids are actually writing a letter in cursive. So we'll follow up with that, but we are in discussion about teaching them more than just the signature of their names.
Okay, is this something that needs to be legislated? Do we need to talk to our representatives?
It couldn't hurt.
Okay.
Yeah, it definitely couldn't hurt.
This is for Dr. Nelly. As you mentioned, anytime you move forward and do something new, there's a give and take. I met with several parents that really loved the idea of the podcast, Let's Be Frank. Thought it was a great idea. It was great. It was transparency and everything. But also on the back end of that, all those who have breakfast with the superintendent, those 15 to 30 people said, hey, would he at least consider possibly still doing that or bringing that in?
So December 3rd, we're scheduled for a breakfast, and it won't be a Saturday. So it'll be a breakfast at 9, and it'll be like a cheese and coffee and crackers at 6 o'clock at night.
Okay.
So that flyer will go home in the coming weeks,
Awesome.
but we're scheduled for December 3rd.
Thank you so much for thinking.
I had a couple of items. One is last meeting I had mentioned that the New Jersey School Board's Delegate Assembly is November 23rd on Saturday. The New Jersey School Board's Delegate Assembly is a body of school boards from around the state. And at that delegate assembly, they vote on resolutions that have been submitted to the New Jersey School Boards Association by a particular district through a resolution subcommittee who puts it forth to ask the New Jersey School Boards as an advocacy group through the legislative committee to ask our legislatures to possibly change a law, create a law, and it's in the form of a New Jersey School Board's policy manual. In that policy manual, there is language, and it always begins under a certain section, the New Jersey School Board believes that. And so this particular delegate assembly, only one resolution was received across the state. It was about state aid and school funding. It was received from the Hillsborough Township Board of Education because, not to get into a lot of detail, last 2008 was the last time the school funding was looked at by the legislature, and they came up with the School Funding Reform Act of 2008. They came up with a metric formula that the money for school aid was supposed to follow the needs of the children. But it's a complicated metric formula that only a few people understand. Our business administrator gets the particular calculations. It always starts out, I'll give you an example. Piscataway, if you take it as, I always like to look at percentages. If Piscataway has a $100 million budget as an adequacy budget to educate all of our children, to give them a thorough and efficient education, that adequacy budget is there, but they ask in this formula, the first piece, how much is local share? Local share is how rich your town is. It's a formula based on aggregate income and property values, so it's much related to your ratables in town. In our particular case now, our equalization aid is equal to 100 million minus that, which is whatever. So we get about $20 million in aid, just to give it as an example. We've been doing a really good job in advocating for all these particular interests. We were always not receiving our aid. I just happened to be the chair of the State School Finance Committee, so I got into the formula, we understand it, we're asking the right questions. Unfortunately, Hillsborough, who submitted this resolution, there are flaws in this formula. And there was one that is so evident that Hillsborough had not done reassessments and property value reassessments. So they, on paper, looks as if they became too rich too fast. And the state considered them over-aided, so the state took aid away. It put their Board of Education into the following position. Their Board of Education lost millions of dollars, and what do you do in a budget you've already done where you've lost millions of dollars? Piscataway was in that position when I got on the board in 2008, 2009. We had to eliminate middle school sports. We had to eliminate teacher positions. We were in a tough spot. So I